and welcome to this very special edition of Inside South Asia with me, Nasnia Tauda. When we launched this show this year, we promised to bring you the stories that matter the most to you from the region. Which is why this week we take a look back at the stories that have mattered and moved you the most throughout this year. To put it quite simply, stories from the region that have made this year what it is. So here's what we have in store for you this week. On top of our rundown this week is how great of a year India has had. To put it quite simply, 2023 has been India's year. From global recognition to a sharp uptick in improvement in the country's economy to political health and even sporting glory, India has dominated in all fields and have made sure that they are a force to be reckoned with. Which is why our top story today is a roundup of the year that India has had. Take a look.
India at the helm, the chair of the group of 20 of the world's biggest economies on a single stage.
नई दिल्ली G20 लीडर्स समिट डिक्लेरेशन पर सहमति बनी है.
A human-centric vision, a collaborative approach towards innovative solutions to global problems is defined in the theme Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, or One Earth, One Family, One Future. There can be no denying the opportunities the G20 summit in New Delhi held out to India as a leading voice on the global stage, as the voice of the global South, as an economic powerhouse that holds a strong say on the future of the global economy. There's been a distinct push to expand the grouping, representing the realities of the 21st century.
The Prime Minister's proposal to G20 leaders to include African Union as a permanent invitee in the G20 process, I think is only reflective of our own position that has remained consistent over the years. And we do believe that the African Union, with its 54 members, with tremendous potential for the future, has to be a part of any international governance process, starting with an influential grouping like the G20.
Keeping the focus on India's rising say in the Committee of Nations, geopolitics to military. From submarine sales, co-production of jet engines to big-ticket arms deals, India is at the center of a new global tilt to shift the power center away from China and Russia. Countries like the US, UK, France and Germany are stepping up their military ties with India. The first state visit for Prime Minister Modi to the US was a landmark for the New Delhi-Washington partnership in multiple ways. Most notably, it included International Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters, a state dinner at the White House, a slew of path-breaking bilateral meetings, a US Congress address by Modi, and an interaction with the Indian-American diaspora. PM Modi by his side in the East Room of the White House, the US President highlighted strategic milestones.
I look forward to discussing how we can strengthen our partnership and build a future together worthy of both our peoples. One grounded on democracy, human rights, freedom, and rule of law.
This feather in India's cap is as big as it gets. The 23rd of August 2023, the date goes down in history for India and for humankind.
India is on the moon.
The world had waited for this moment with bated breath. 1.4 billion prayers rested on this. The moments can hardly be expressed, only felt. India becomes the first country to land on the moon's south pole, and only the fourth ever to reach the surface of the Earth's closest cosmic neighbor and natural satellite, that speck in the sky that has intrigued generations. The celebrations and congratulatory messages from around India and the world are a testament to years of hard work of our scientists, of huge lessons learnt, of massive challenges overcome. And it propels India into the future like seldom before.
ये कोई साधारण सफलता नहीं है। ये अनंत अंतरिक्ष में भारत के वैज्ञानिक सामर्थ्य का शंखनाद है।
On the legal front, few rulings have been as historical for the Union of India as the Supreme Court's nod to withdrawal of special status to Kashmir. A nearly 8-decade-old dispute over Jammu and Kashmir's integration with India stands resolved for good. The judgment is a massive precedent, paving the way to resolving complex political and legal issues within the parameters of the Indian Constitution.
The state of Jammu and Kashmir does not have internal sovereignty, which is distinguishable from the powers and privileges enjoyed by other states in the country. Article 370 was a feature of asymmetric federalism and not sovereignty.
Another episode that had the world's eyes glued on India, a rescue operation taking on massive odds. As the 41 workers who were trapped in the Silkiara tunnel in Uttarakhand came out alive after 17 days, it was difficult to say whose joy was greater. The trapped workers, their families, the nation that had watched and prayed each day, or the rescue teams that had been working day and night. A multi-party team was at work throughout. The national and state disaster response forces, the Indian Army, border roads organizations, police and local authorities, alongside the National Highways and Infrastructure Development Corporation. This is the new India, a new parliament building that symbolizes above all else a breaking away from colonial shackles. Inaugurated in 2023, the new Parliament House symbolizes the aspirations of 1.4 billion Indians. It also reflects the strength of Indian democracy, readying for ever new dimensions. Just months to go for India's next parliamentary elections, due in April-May 2024. The world's largest democracy awaits the biggest date on its political calendar.
However, India's neighbor, Pakistan, has not had that great of a year. This is because the country has been seeing devastating rises in security lapses and terror attacks over the past 12 months. Up next, we take a look at the country's bruised security and surveillance efforts throughout the year.
It's been a year of deadly attacks on Pakistan. Militant attacks surged in Pakistan in 2023. Up until September alone, 700 security personnel and civilians had been killed in these attacks. And most of these attacks took place in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan and northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. But according to a report by Islamabad-based Center for Research and Security Studies, Fatalities from terrorist attacks in 2023 increased by 19% compared to 2022. And the two Pakistani provinces bordering Afghanistan suffered 92% of all fatalities. Pakistan security forces lost at least 386 personnel. 36% of all fatalities, including 137 army and 208 police personnel in the first 9 months of 2023. Well, in the last week of September, more than 50 people were killed and dozens injured in a suicide attack in Mustang, in Pakistan's Balochistan province, as people gathered to celebrate the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. Then on November 4th, the TJP militants attacked the Pakistan Air Force's Mian Wali training air base, some 300 kilometers from Lahore. And this attack damaged 3 grounded aircraft. On December 12th, at least 23 Pakistani soldiers were killed when terrorists rammed an explosive-laden vehicle into security forces' post in restive Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, in one of the worst terror attacks targeting security forces in recent years. The Tehreek-e-Jihad claimed responsibility for the attack. On December 15th again, 3 days later, in Peshawar, at least 5 law enforcement officials were killed in militant attacks on a regional police headquarters and a checkpost in the restive northwest Pakistan. A string of attacks showing how vulnerable Pakistan's security apparatus has become to the terrorists. So the question is, which are the groups that are operating in the region? The biggest group operating in the region is the Tehreek-e-Taliban, a regional affiliate of the Afghan Taliban. The group operates out of Afghanistan and has intensified attacks on Pakistan's military establishment and security officials in the last year. The government in Taliban maintains that it has no links to the group. The other group operating in the area is a regional offshoot of the Islamic State. However, there are dozens of other smaller groups operating in the region as well. Given the scale and frequency of the attacks on Pakistan in the last year, reports say that Pakistan is even mulling handing out bases to America to operate in order to neutralize terror targets. Islamabad has also stepped up diplomatic pressure on Kabul to prevent the TTP from staging attacks from Afghan sanctuaries. But clearly, a haven for terrorists, Pakistan, that has bred and sheltered terrorists for years, is now under attack itself, with its own security establishment under threat.
Geographically, China is not part of this region, but there can be no denying of the influence that the dragon has had in the region. From Pakistan, Maldives to Sri Lanka, and even to Bhutan and Nepal, to some degree, China has had an influence in the region. And this has caused alarm bells for India. Take a look at this report.
Xi'an 6, that China calls a research vessel, finally docked at the Colombo port, and India saw red. What comes out eventually now is Sri Lanka being open to China's presence in the region.
In the international cooperation for promoting development in Sri Lanka, China is undoubtedly Sri Lanka's closest friend.
And less than 1,000 kilometers southwestwards, the Maldivian islands have a new pro-China leadership in place. Mohammad Muizzu comes to power on a strong pro-China and India out plank. The new Maldivian government is in the process of reviewing more than 100 agreements signed with New Delhi. 77 Indian military personnel managing helicopters and Dornier aircraft have been asked to leave. There's no clear picture yet on a predicted big China tilt and how far it will go. For now, President Muizzu only says he wants the Maldives to keep out of geopolitical rivalries.
People of the Maldives did not vote me in to allow any military presence in the Maldives. That's the reason. It happens to be from India, and that's why we are talking with the Indian government to remove them, and I'm sure we can do that.
Then Pakistan. Ever warming China-Pakistan ties in recent years are being seen as a direct counter to rising India-US ties. Biggest of all, it extends to Chinese President Xi Jinping's pet Belt and Road Initiative. 10 years into this project that has vastly broadened China's global influence. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, the Pakistan part of the BRI, is a 3,000-kilometer infrastructure project through Pakistan, and it sees big benefits therein.
I anticipate and I expect that Pakistan would be a very important partner in this journey with this BRI's initiative.
The increasing China influence extends to Nepal and Bhutan as well. Trade and debt diplomacy remain the biggest draws. It extends to border talks and moves to resolve long-standing disputes. China is working to settle boundary rows and make diplomatic inroads. And again, alarm bells sound in New Delhi. Step back and zoom out to the bigger picture. The alert in the Indian Ocean region arises through China's String of Pearls offensive. China's ship docking in Sri Lanka, a pro-China leadership in the Maldives, the Pakistan-China all-weather alliance, warming ties with Nepal and Bhutan, a Chinese port in Bangladesh. It all adds up. A series of skirmishes between Indian and Chinese troops along the line of actual control and the Sino-India border starting May 2020 sent out shockwaves. And the visible Chinese strategy in South Asia is reason enough for growing suspicions.
2023 spelled out in many ways that global warming and weather-related phenomena are here to stay and has its say too. A string of weather-related events took place in the region, with focus being on global warming and climate change. Now, climate experts have said that irreversible damage will be caused and the livelihood of millions will be at risk. Here's the story.
It's turned into a recurring nightmare in Pakistan. At least 50 were killed, thousands displaced in floods in June this year. This nearly a year after massive flooding killed more than 1,700 people and affected 33 million others. The flood problem extends into India. Assam was badly hit, like almost every year. Parts of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir reeled under the onslaught. A glacier lake burst in Sikkim in October wreaked massive havoc, killing close to 100. Many remain missing even now. Fourteen bridges were swept away with the dam of a mega hydropower project. Close to 2,000 houses were damaged. Some 2,500 people were moved to relief camps. In the mountains, landslides have turned more frequent. Himachal and Uttarakhand are the most recent examples. Himalayan communities are feeling the effects. Cracks on roads and houses in Joshimath in India's Uttarakhand raised big concerns. Many residents in the sinking town had to be relocated. Corrective action has been initiated. It's a big wake-up call. Climate change-induced downpours, drought and soaring temperatures have become increasingly common across South Asia, making it a region that is one of the world's most vulnerable to impacts of global warming. A University of Leeds study found ice from glaciers in the Himalayas is melting at least 10 times higher than the average rate over past centuries. Researchers said the Himalayas in Pakistan, Nepal and India had lost 40% of their ice over several hundred years. Then there's the displacement factor. A report published by activist group ActionAid in 2020 estimated the region could see up to 63 million people becoming migrants by 2050 as a result of extreme weather events. Climate scientists also warned that extreme weather patterns are aggravating dire health conditions in some of the world's poorest regions. An example of this is the record number of deaths due to dengue in Bangladesh this year. Climate experts predict irreversible consequences to the livelihoods of hundreds of millions. 2023 has been another living, heaving reminder of the World Bank's dire warnings about climate change in the region. Cooperative efforts against climate change between countries of the region remains an uphill task as leaders worry about sacrificing sovereignty or a domestic backlash. But climate change is not a zero-sum game. It is the rare international political question on which India and Pakistan, not to mention Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal and Sri Lanka, are or should be on the same side. It is time for South Asia to talk climate.
Last but not least, how can we forget the resilience of Afghan women who are facing further suppression under the Taliban regime? From prohibiting girls and women from receiving education to cutting off their livelihoods completely by even going to the extent of shutting down all beauty salons. We dedicate this year to the resilience and the unwavering strength of the women and girls of Afghanistan. And we sincerely hope that 2024 will be a better year for them. For the WION team, I'm Dasuni Atada, signing off.